Welcome to a show all about the food co-op here in Bay City. I'm going to let Robin Devereaux Nelson introduce herself and her guest. Robin?
Hey, this is Robin. I am the outreach coordinator with the Bay City Cooperative Market, and we're very lucky to have the assistant director of Food Co-op Initiative. It's a national organization that helps startup food co-ops get off the ground. Jacqueline Hanna's with us today, and she's going to talk with us about food co-ops on a national level, and we're going to talk about why the food co-op is a viable operation for Bay City.
Thanks so much for having me here today, Robin.
Very welcome. So Jacqueline's coming to us today. She's kind of doing a little media marketing for us and talking to folks about food co-ops in general. So Jacqueline, would you mind explaining to the listeners, what is a food co-op?
I love that question. I'd be happy to. So a food co-op is a community-owned grocery store that the community opens and owns itself to accomplish its aims in the community. I like to call it's an economic engine for creating the community you want. You create this beautiful full-service grocery store together that functions not just as an awesome grocery store, which it will, but in addition meets your aims for your community. It brings economic development, it brings jobs, it brings a focus on local food and grows your local farms, it grows your local food movement, and it becomes a hub of community that knits your community together and really makes it richer and more with what it wants to be.
And, you know, that's one of the reasons that I am so excited about the food co-op in Bay City. I mean, I'm a farm kid, so I grew up right out here in Linwood, Michigan, and on a very on a large farm, I guess. And I watched a lot of the farms around me kind of die because farmers didn't want to farm in ways that maybe the government wanted them to farm, farm ways that were uncomfortable for them. And it just became economically impossible for them to continue to exist. And unfortunately, the economy in the area kind of started to die. Mm-hmm. And it's growing now. We are revitalizing our downtown area. And we're really interested in opening the co-op in the downtown area because it is a USDA-designated food desert. And what that means is that we don't have a grocery store within walking distance for folks that live in and around the downtown area where they can buy fresh fruit and vegetables particularly.
Yes.
One of the challenges that we've had in growing ownership is folks want to know, what do I get for being an owner? And I was one of those people, like many of you, I thought that the food co-op was going to be a really great idea, and I was going to be on board just as soon as that store opened.
Right?
I wanted that store to be open, and then I was going to pay my $200 and invest in the store and be an owner. But what I have learned is that we need those initial owners jumping on board so that we can, A, prove viability in our community and have the commitment, and B, so we have some of the equity that we need to open the store.
Absolutely. I mean, you said it really well. It's a new concept for people. You really, as a community, are going to open and own a grocery store. There's no one else to do it for you. So what I think people often, what we're used to experiencing in our culture is, let's say Trader Joe's announces for Bay City, and 6 months later, pow, we have a beautiful Trader Joe's and we didn't do anything. It just shows up, right? That's how it works. And so we are like, okay, great, a food co-op. That sounds pretty cool. And then, pow, in 6 months I'm going to get that. And it's like, well, no, because the whole thing with a food co-op is it's yours. You as a community are developing a multi-million-dollar business to create a better community and to create change. There's no one else to do the work. There's no one else to do the investing in the business and purchasing the shares to make it happen. So it takes a while to get people's minds around. This is actually us coming together and developing a vision and then a business together. And so when Trader Joe's opens a store, pow, 6 months later, they've been doing 3 to 7 years of site selection, business development, feasibility, and we have to do all that work as a community. We don't want to open a multi-million-dollar business and then just have it fail. We're going to open something successful that's around for decades to come. We're going to do the kind of work that Trader Joe's would do before they showed up in your community to make sure this is real and viable and that it's here to make a difference. So we have to get in early. We have to have enough owners to develop this thing. And as you said, it's a test of viability. The question really becomes, and I see this in communities all over the nation that I work with, does this community feel? Does Bay City feel? They're the kind of community that comes together and gets things done to improve their community for themselves. Are they ready to invest a little money and a little time and a little energy to build something that will make change for decades to come? And it's, will that vision sell here? I believe it will. That's why I'm here. I work with over 120 communities around the nation. I do not get to visit them all. We picked Bay City for one of our seed grants last year, which is a grant we only give out to 10 to 12 developing food co-ops around the nation because we saw real potential here in this community. But it does. It takes multiple years of work and getting our heads around, you mean I become an owner now and then I get something later, which I know has been picking up lately. I think that you guys have really done some great ownership growth and the idea is really starting to catch on in Bay City.
It really is. And I mean, if I could just tell kind of a little homespun story that really meant a lot to me. I had someone tell me a story about a woman who was a co-op owner. She was an elderly lady. And when she shopped, she liked to buy these big 25-pound bags of rice. And the 25-pound bags of rice were located on the bottom shelf of the aisle. And she was having a really tough time picking up those 25-pound bags of rice and lifting them up and putting them in her cart. So as most co-ops have, there was this suggestion board located up at the front of the co-op. So she wrote on the little card, those 25-pound bags of rice are really heavy. I can't put those in my cart. The next time she came in to shop, the bags of rice were on the third shelf where she could just slide them down into her cart.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys can go to a big box store and just say, it's really hard for me to lift that bag of rice from the bottom shelf and put it in my cart. They don't care. At a co-op, we care about every single owner that comes and shops in our store. Mm-hmm. It's very personal.
It is.
It's more of a hometown feel, and something that Stuart Reed, he's the director,
executive director
at Food Co-op Initiative. Something that he said at one of the conferences I was at was the co-op is big enough to suit your needs and small enough to meet your neighbors.
Yeah.
And that's really what it's about. It's really about community and inclusion and healthy food access for everybody.
Right? Absolutely true. I think that something's been said to me very similarly is that when I walk into a food co-op, I feel like I'm in the kind of grocery store I grew up in.
Exactly.
I see my neighbors. When I make a suggestion or a comment, somebody writes it down and gets back to me. I mean, go to any chain grocery store, and find a comment card. Now, a few of them will have them, a few. And then actually get a handwritten answer that's posted in the store so everyone can see it, and then have a change happen based on that card.
Right.
And that is exactly what it's like in a food co-op. You own it. It belongs to the community. They're there to serve you, not someone else's profit. It's a business. We want to be profitable just enough that we can stay open to serve the community. But what it's going to do is use any profit to reinvest in the store in a way that develops it the way you want it to, the way Bay City wants it to, because it's their store.
Exactly. And, growing economy is really important for us in our community. We watched a huge downturn happen here starting in the 80s, and it lasted for a long time, almost 20 years. And the downtown area is now beginning to be revitalized. And I wanted you to think about the outlying areas of Bay City. This is a farming community. And one thing that food co-ops do is support our local farms and producers and farmers. And Jacqueline had some statistics about just how much produce or how much is utilized in co-ops as opposed to a big box store.
Absolutely. It's a really impressive number, and it really talks about the difference your food co-op creates. So in food co-ops, we know nationally, we've gotten some national data together from all the food co-ops nationally. There's hundreds of food co-ops nationally. And we all share our data with each other. And we found out that on average, 20% of every dollar that comes into the food co-op that you spend at the register buying your groceries goes back to a local producer or farm. You're like, well, 20%. I thought it was going to be 100. It's a food co-op, right? Well, the reality of the food system is we can't get our bananas here in Bay City. We don't grow them here.
Exactly.
But the chain grocery stores, the data was different. We went and dug up their data just to see and get a comparison. And by their own definition of local, only 3 to 5% of their sales, 3 to 5 cents of every dollar, is going back to anyone anywhere near your community.
Right. And another thing that's really important to know about the food co-op is the producers that we use or the resources that we use for getting groceries into our store, we choose that.
Yes.
So we are able to choose suppliers who are responsible about the earth, about the folks who are working for them, so that we're sustaining that not only in our community, but on a larger kind of global arena. So that's really important. It impresses me.
Well, and the effect on local farms, if I can tell a little story, and I ran a food co-op. I was the general manager of the food co-op in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, called Common Ground Food Co-op for 9 years, and helped them grow that business several times. We expanded twice. And in that experience, you're like, well, okay, but a food co-op is going to be maybe 2% of Bay City's grocery dollars will go through the co-op, though. And so what difference does that really make? Well, I got to experience it firsthand, and anyone who's worked in a food co-op can tell you, when the farmers come to you and say, we had no idea the impact you were going to have on us. My son has always wanted to farm with me, but there's no money in this. I sent him to the city. And my son is back. And guess what? I'm about to hire my daughter. And you know what? 2 years later, he had 4 more employees from his family. And it's now a family farm again. And he was not an isolated outlier. We had other farms come to us, say, just recently from a startup food co-op that opened a year ago. And they had a farmer stand up, and she said, I want to tell you a little story. She said, a year ago, I was on food stamps. She said, I'm not proud of that. She says, I was never proud of that. I never wanted that to be the case. I worked 60 hours, 70 hours a week, and I was on food stamps. And she says, today, she says, I'm not on food stamps, and my employees are being paid a living wage. And she's like, because of the co-op. And you will just watch those waves of change for your farms, and then little other food micro businesses develop. Young people can develop more of a food culture because the co-ops, they're kind of sustaining and anchoring this whole food economy that brings all the money and the resources back to your farmers and your community.
Right, and I mean, and aside from being a grocery store, which we intend to be,
an excellent one,
an excellent grocery store, we're also going to be a fun place for the community to be. Generally, food co-ops have really awesome community rooms, and owners are able to use those free of charge. If you're talking about what's your benefit, right now for our owners, if you become an owner, you are able to use your owner card up at the co-op in Mount Pleasant, Green Tree. You're able to go up there on their Owner Appreciation Day and utilize your card until we get our store open. Mm-hmm. I also offer free advertising for business owners who are food co-op owners in our online newsletter, also on our website. So a little bit of free advertising for you. So that's kind of a benefit. And really the biggest benefit for me is being part of something. Just another story, the night that I paid for my membership, for my ownership, I was driving home from the meeting, and all of a sudden I got this big smile on my face, and this feeling came over me, and it was exactly the same feeling that I got when, as a single mom, I bought my first house by myself. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm part owner of a grocery store. How cool is that?
Right?
So not only do I work for the co-op, but in part of my work, I'm also able to look at it as an owner, how is what I'm doing affecting my community, my job? So when I put something out there about the co-op, I also think about, as an owner, how does that affect me? So I feel lucky to work for the co-op and to be an owner in the co-op.
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that you can be very proud of. You buy a share in a business, you actually own it. One of my favorite T-shirts from a lot of startup food co-ops says, I own a grocery store with my friends and neighbors.
Exactly.
And you really do. And what an amazing feeling. And, these are not little fly-by-night businesses. Bay City's planning to do it right and open a decent-sized grocery store that's full service, that's going to be well-developed, that's going to take money to, unveil, but it's going to be top-quality, beautiful grocery store that you own that's having all these impacts. And you will see, through the classes and through the connections at the co-op, kids growing up through the co-op, people making friendships and connections. It just knits community together in a way that you can be super proud of.
And another thing that's really worth noting is, I've been in business development for a long time. And I think that some folks who are thinking about ownership, they think about investing their $200, and it's such a tenuous kind of thing, opening a new business. Mm-hmm. Well, I want to tell you that co-ops are pretty amazing because they have a 72%